I'm getting nervous, you guys. I can't lie. Because we're so confident in Tom Aspinall. And that's the reason why I'm feeling nerves heading into this weekend, is because there's been times in the past where UFC champions have been heavily favorited to win their fights and they've just completely sold the bag. And there's no other way to put it, man. They just lost the load. So I'm making this video preemptively. I'll probably release it before Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane in Abu Dhabi. But dude, I'm nervous, dude. I can't lie to you guys. It almost feels like every single time that we're this certain of an outcome and we're like, yo, this guy is the biggest lock of the year, he ends up finding a way to just completely cook it. So let's talk about a few of these instances where we were like, yes, this person by whatever he wants, and then he ended up folding. The first and one of the most notable examples is going to be Adesanya versus Strickland. Izzy felt like he was getting a freebie and getting a Sean Strickland matchup after Dricus du Plessis. I think he was hurt. He couldn't fight for whatever reason. So that matchup fell through. He wasn't ready to go after the Whitaker fight. So Adesanya was like, yo, Sean Strickland, you're in. And in Izzy's mind and all of our mind, yeah, he's that man. He just avenged his only loss at middleweight with the KO more spectacular than anything that he did at his first run. So we're getting a reloaded Israel Adesanya championship stint, and he's going to be beating all of these guys super easily like he did the first time around, right? Sean Strickland is fodder. He's already been knocked out by Pereira. Pereira just got knocked out by Izzy. This should be a technical masterclass from Adesanya, a jab leg kick merchantry, if you will. And he's going to beat Sean Strickland soundly. It didn't go that way. Sean Strickland nearly finished Israel Adesanya round 1 and then concurrently went on to dominate him for 5 more rounds after this. And nobody even figured for a second that this would be Adesanya's nightmare matchup. And it was exactly that. In Australia, which is like his backyard since he's from New Zealand, China, Nigeria, wherever, America. His roots are in New Zealand. He trains in City Kickboxing. It's a Zealand gym. It's a Kiwi gym. And they were in Australia. Sean Strickland, I'm not sure if he got in Israel Adesanya's head in the presser, but after dropping him, he for sure was in his head. Whatever led to this win, my point is that Sean Strickland was viewed by Adesanya and the rest of us as just something to do until du Plessis was ready, because that was the real fight. We ended up getting it still, but it wasn't with Adesanya as the title holder. He was a challenger in that fight, and it's funny to think that the only time that Israel Adesanya had ever won since becoming champion while wearing blue gloves was against Alex Pereira in the rematch at 185. Other than that, he's just been getting tossed. Adesanya's going to have a few entries on this list. Adesanya versus Blachowicz. This was another moment where, John Jones was on the table here. That fight was something that Israel Adesanya was calling for. He was trying to get John Jones to come out of retirement to fight him at 205. So he was like, how am I going to do that? I'm going to go up, I'm going to challenge the 205 champion. This was fresh off of a really great performance against Paulo Costa, who was a large middleweight, so people were like, I'm not completely past the idea of him going up and securing a second belt up a weight class, because Paulo Costa was pretty big, and he was able to strike with him and control the striking exchanges against a guy like that. Little did we know that Jan Blachowicz was a lot better than Paulo Costa at the time. Jan wasn't really well respected as a light heavyweight until he won this fight, though. He had a bunch of accomplishments and had been in the UFC for a long time, but he beat Reyes. We didn't really accept either of these fighters to be on the same level of greatness as Israel Adesanya, so it wasn't really a far-fetched idea in the moment. Something that I didn't see happening, though, was Israel Adesanya just getting wrestle spammed until he lost his undefeated record in pursuit of the second belt. There was definitely a differential in Israel Adesanya's ability to be massive at 185 versus being considered a big light heavyweight as well. Jan Blachowicz, he's a true light heavyweight. Whenever you think about the dimensions of a fighter in this weight class, Jan Blachowicz fits the bill. Israel Adesanya came in like 12 pounds light. He was like 193 pounds, maybe 195 pounds, 10 pounds light. He was in the 190s, and he was like holding the pizza box on the scale. It's like, you better eat something. I don't even know. You thought he was going to beat John Jones at 195 pounds not cutting weight. It's like, dude, he dared to be great, and yes, he does deserve kudos for that. And yes, he was still a champion whenever he went back down to 185, but in my head, especially since I was newer to the sport at this time, I thought that this was going to be like a slam dunk for Israel Adesanya, and he wouldn't face much resistance out of Jan Blachowicz, but it didn't end up going that way. He lost this fight handedly. There was really nothing that anyone could say about it other than Israel Adesanya was still champion of 185 as a cope. But this was supposed to be like his moment here. This was actually a fight on the same card, UFC 273, I believe it was. Jan versus Sterling 1. this was more funny than anything. Peter Yan was the one who sold the bag here because, like, all he had to do was not throw that knee and he would have been champion going into whatever was next for him, because Sterling wouldn't have gotten an immediate rematch with the way that the fight was going. Sterling was doing good in the early going of the fight, but then he just gassed out. His pacing was way too high for whatever cardio he did bring to the fight. Yan was so up, and then he just landed this illegal knee, mate. And yeah, Aljo milked the severity of the strike, but it was within his right to do that, especially since the fight was, like, slipping away from him. In the same situation, many of you would have done the same ratty thing that he did and probably made it look a lot worse in performance than he was able to do. The funniest bit of this is, like, the ending sequence where Mark Smith is holding up both of their hands because Aljamain Sterling is, like, fighting tears and he's, like, actually crying while getting the belt wrapped around his waist. And Peter Yan is on the other side of him holding his fist in the air like he had actually won the fight. Aljo did recuperate and then come back and slide for himself, making it so that Peter Yan was never a defending champion, even though he did hold the belt. That's something that people always like to dig on fighters for. It's like, yeah, you were UFC champion, like Jamal Hill, but yeah, you never defended your title. And it's like, they forget that fighters who are fan-beloved like Yuri or like Peter Yan, they never defended their belts either. So that's not really like a slight. They say that about Strickland. They're like, yeah, you never defended your title. It's like, dude, yes, but he was champion. Adesanya makes another appearance on this list versus Pereira in his first fight. Adesanya he sold the bag again. He was up so fat in this fight. And yes, Pereira's corner did light a fire under him before that 5th round. But he was up 5 rounds, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to just take this last round off. I've already won the fight. He's broken. There's no way I'll get finished, right? Instead of keeping the heat on, he was like, you know what? I'm going to just coast. And we're just going to win the fight on the cards like I always do. Jab, leg kick, jab, leg kick. And Alex scores this amazing come-from-behind victory, which would have been a sleepy KO if not for Mark Goddard stepping in and stopping the fight whenever he did. Alex Pereira put himself on the map in this fight because the Strickland fight that he had won by knockout, it didn't really have any context at the time. With Strickland being another champion that he's beaten, that's a very well-aging win. But this was Israel Adesanya's first loss at 185 pounds in the UFC. The ghost of his kickboxing past came back to haunt him. He was supposed to be untouchable here. And Alex Pereira, yes, he's a special fighter, but he was still developing that narrative at the time. And this was his first real accomplishment in the UFC, was getting the belt at 185, beating Israel Adesanya, becoming the king of this new division that was owned by Izzy for so long. Next, it was Pereira who sold the bag against Adesanya at UFC 287 in the rematch. Adesanya was a pack in all of our minds in this fight. Pereira was meant to go out and replicate what he did in round 5 of the first fight in round 1. Easy money. Israel Adesanya is going night-night, and that's going to be it. Alex Pereira is about to get a huge W right now. Alex Pereira came out super aggressive, pinned Adesanya into the corner of the octagon, and then started chasing a finish. But then he just got way too horny to get out of the octagon and ended up getting caught. This is Israel Adesanya exploiting a weakness of Alex Pereira at the time, which was going to be looping shots over the top. He just kept on tagging him with this right hand. This was the same shot that he was able to catch him with at the end of round 1 in the first fight. That's another thing that made the first fight so spectacular, is because Israel Adesanya nearly KO'd Alex Pereira at the very end of round 1. And all of my Pereira fanboys were crapping bricks at the sight of that. I remember, man, how scared I was. But the only difference here is that Alex Pereira actually didn't absorb the right hand in the second fight, and he got laid out, and it was bad. It was the same sequence. It was a right hand and then a lead hook, but the lead hook landed on the way down, and Alex Pereira got Andy's Toys KO'd, and that was kind of it. Israel Adesanya does the bow and arrow thing, and this moment lives forever. After we were all certain of Alex Pereira's victory in the second fight. Pereira back on the list here against Magomed Ankalaev. I guess you could say both of these guys kind of sold against each other, but it was never really something that we perceived to be a surefire thing whenever Alex Pereira challenged Magomed Ankalaev for his belt the first time. In the rematch, though, Alex promised that he would return to his past form after being injured in the first fight and not being able to do what he normally does in that fight because his body was limiting him. But I mean, fans only really believed in his comeback largely because they liked him. And I mean, out of anyone else who says, I just wasn't healthy and all of these things, excuses, we would just be like, all right, keep coping, buddy. And then we would just move on. That's exactly what we did to Ankalaev, because Magomed tried to pull the same card after losing this fight. We were just like, yeah, whatever, keep coping. But with Alex Pereira, we heard him say, I was at 40% in this fight. And we were all just like, Shama, man. Shama. You're going to get him, Shama, because Shama. But the injuries here weren't really like the leading narrative. Some fans were paying attention to it and giving it credence. Most people just believed that Magomed Ankalaev had Pereira's number, and no matter what he said going into this fight, it was just going to be another 5 rounds of domination. Little did we know that Magomed Ankalaev was going to be hit by Alex Pereira with the most blessed right hand, and he won this fight in the first round, ending the title run of Magomed Ankalaev in a little bit over 1 minute, which was just glorious, mate. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. This was a fight that I'll always remember. I still get happy thinking about Alex Pereira as the champion of this division again. It just feels right, man. This is the most egregious example of anything that I could mention on this list relative to what we're going to watch this weekend. Usman versus Edwards 2. This is a rematch versus Usman and a guy that he had beaten before. Beaten easily, mind you. Edwards didn't put up much of a fight in their first one on Dos Anjos versus Cowboy 2. All those years ago, people were even beginning to warm up to Usman. I should only speak for myself here because however you felt about him at the time, I was starting to like Kamaru Usman because he was actually getting the finishes in his fights. And in this fight, Usman was winning. It didn't look like he was going to finish Leon, but he was winning and he was dominating. And Leon getting trashed all the way up until the last 5 minutes, got a crazy fire lit under him by his corner, and he throws a magical head kick that sleeps Kamaru Usman out cold, and then he beats him in the trilogy. So this is like the prime example of something that I can think of just being a surefire outcome. Kamaru Usman is going to beat Leon Edwards, and he just doesn't do it. And then he didn't do it again after that. And look at the trajectories of both of their careers afterwards. I mean, Usman just beat Joaquin Buckley, another surging contender in this division, and he gave Khamzat Chimaev, who may very well be the most dominant champion in the organization's history, his best fight whenever they matched up against each other. Leon Edwards lost his title immediately after the Usman trilogy to Bilal Muhammad, and he's just recently been choked out by Sean Brady. So it's like, I really wish that this never happened. This is why you can never be too certain of different outcomes occurring in the sport, just because nothing's guaranteed. They're throwing them leathers, they're throwing kicks at each other. This is such an unpredictable and entropic sport that we give our attention to. Nothing goes the way it's supposed to, ever. And this is living proof of that. I know that I said that the last example that we talked about is probably the best example of what I'm trying to get across in this video, is that we can never be too certain of different outcomes occurring. This is probably the best example. It's just WMMA and I rarely talk about it. I'll make an exception here because Nunes versus Pena 1 was like, mate, I have no explanation as to why this ever happened. Even if Nunes came in with every single common cold, flu, coronavirus, AIDS even, I don't know how she loses to Juliana Pena. Even on her worst day, how did this even occur? How? I look at the photos of Juliana Pena outstriking Amanda Nunes, and it looks like AI. This is Sora AI, bro, that we're looking at on our screen. Screenshots of a Sora AI video. The GOAT of WMMA, female Michael Jordan getting choked with no hooks in, getting RNC'd with no hooks in by Juliana Pena. I couldn't believe my eyes whenever I was watching this, dude. No matter what Amanda Nunes accomplished, she beat all of the GOATs of her era, and then eras afterwards, subsequently beating every single top fighter all the way up until she retired. Her record is always going to be stained by a loss to Juliana Pena, which just should never have happened. And like I said, Nunes is like WMMA's Michael Jordan, but this just confuses things to me. I can't undeniably say that she is the GOAT over a woman like Kayla Harrison if she's able to get through all of the tests of her era, especially if she beats Amanda Nunes. Kayla Harrison is the greatest woman fighter ever. And she only needs to accomplish that one time because this happened. It's not like, well, you know, Amanda Nunes never lost, and this was the first fight that she lost against another really good girl. No, she lost to Juliana Pena, bro. You lost to Juliana. Nah, bro, that's just gonna piss me off. That's actually going to make me mad thinking about it. So yeah, you guys, that's a list. I'm not saying Aspinall is about to sell this, and that's a guaranteed thing either, because like I just said, no outcome is promised to us. But if he does, and the off chance that Tom Aspinall does end up folding this, I'm not suicidal. So you guys, please do like, comment, and subscribe if you made it to this point in the video. I'm going to catch you fellas in the next one. Peace out.